I mean, the government is now making noises that sound ominously like last year. Sajid Javid, very downbeat, I thought he was last night, but saying we're not bringing in Plan B at this point. Now, Plan B would be a return to working from home and mandatory masks. But we then learn that there may be a Plan C, which would be households being kept away from each other, social distancing, frankly, another lockdown. And if you say to any Tory politician right now, can you guarantee us that you won't cancel Christmas this year? They cannot do that. These are ominous sounds, aren't they?
They really are. And I mean, it's really depressing. And all we're doing is we're actually damaging people's mental health. Even just talking about it is damaging people. I've already had calls from people saying they are absolutely terrified once again that they're going to be kept away from their families, that their families in care homes are going to be denied visits, which has already destroyed them. And they've watched their relatives just crumble before their eyes over the last 20 months. It's like Groundhog Day. It's absolutely where we were last year, but the difference was that last year we didn't have almost all of the adult population vaccinated, and we were told that was the answer. We're being treated like children, we're being groomed. I actually feel that I'm being groomed by an abusive partner, and I really do. That's a terrible thing to say, but that's how I feel. I feel that we're having these things dangled all of the time and then taken away, and we're being punished for being naughty. And I think Sajid last night was doing exactly that. Look, guys, if you're not good, if you don't behave, you're going to be on the detention step, and that means no Christmas.
Exactly.
That's what he meant.
Exactly right. It's sort of, if you don't behave, you will take Christmas away from you again. And of course, it all comes back to that dreaded chorus, that dreaded refrain, to protect the NHS. Frankly, I said it last night, I said it today. I know it's important that the NHS doesn't get overwhelmed, but please stop telling me to protect the NHS. Stop assuming that I will sacrifice my life, my freedom, everything about my existence to protect the NHS. The NHS is supposed to protect us. And the idea that I and you and the citizens of this country take secondary importance to an organisation that we pay for is not acceptable anymore. We do not accept that we have to do anything to protect the NHS, and the government's not going to get away with that this year, I don't think.
Well, they shouldn't get away with it. And we mustn't forget, Kevin, that we've actually had winter crises in the NHS for the last 2 decades. We can find those headlines going back as far as 2000, probably further, and people waiting 16 hours in ambulances, which is absolutely outrageous. No one should be waiting 16 hours in an ambulance, but this is not new. And yes, COVID may put a bit of extra pressure on that, but let's not also forget that in the last 10 years, the number of beds available in the NHS has gone down dramatically. So we have less beds. We've had 20 months for the government who have thrown money hand over fist at testing companies, PPE companies, giving out lateral flow tests to people that don't need it. That money could have been invested in opening up beds in the NHS so that we didn't have this crisis. We've done nothing to prepare for this. We were told the vaccine was the answer. Obviously it isn't, although it does appear to me to be the answer in terms of we wanted people to not die of this disease. Of course we do. We don't want anyone to die. And we really have broken that link in a major way. So we've done everything that we can. You and I and everybody else have given up 20 months of our lives. Half of my daughter's life has lived in lockdown to do this. Terrible. Half of it. And now we're being told, well, actually, it's not over.
Yeah, and I know that the vaccine, is efficacious in terms of people not getting it too seriously, not dying of it, not having to go into hospital. And that last phrase, not having to go into hospital, seems rather crucial in this discussion. But given that the rhetoric and all the noises right now sound as if we are going into exactly the same position as last year, can someone explain to me what the point of the vaccine was? I mean, I thought this was supposed to have made the situation a lot better, and yet we are being told it's going to be just as bad as last year. It could be worse than last year. 100,000 cases a day. Well, what's the vaccine for then?
Okay, so I don't think cases is where we should be focusing.
Yeah.
We should be focusing on, are people getting seriously ill of this and ending up in hospital? And yes, sadly, some people are, but nowhere near the number that were a year ago when we had cases this high. The other thing that I think we haven't done is we've never treated a disease where we let people get seriously ill before we do anything to try and help them. And that's what we do. We only treat COVID patients once they're actually in hospital because they're too ill to be in the community. Why have we not armed our GPs and our pre-hospital care people with things like steroids, antivirals, all of the things that we know can actually perhaps prevent them from being in hospital? Why are we allowing them to get to hospital? You know, there are doctors in the States that have been speaking up about this, and they feel that so many people that have died because they've got to the point of needing a ventilator who could have been saved by pre-hospital care. Why are we not throwing our money there? Sajid talked last night about these 2 wonderful antivirals. Where are they? When can I prescribe them? Can I prescribe them today? No, of course I can't. Nobody knows where they are.
And why do I need an antiviral which will halve my chance of dying from COVID when I've been told that the vaccine will virtually get rid of my chance of dying from COVID altogether? I'm getting confused.
Well, exactly. And all I can say is, surely for those sad people that are dying of COVID still having had the vaccine, well, give the GPs the antivirals and let us stop them getting into hospital, and maybe we can stop it altogether. But we've never treated a disease like this. You know, if we have somebody with flu in the community, we don't say to them, oh, stay at home, Johnny, and if you get really bad, can you go to A&E? Of course we don't. When flu arrives, we give them Tamiflu. We give them an antiviral. We give them antibiotics for their secondary infections. Where are we in trying to stop this and live with it? Because he has said, Sajid, all the way along, we must learn to live with this. Chris Whitty said we must learn to live with this. We're not learning to live with it.
Are we? No,
we're not learning anything.
From last night, from what Sajid Javid said, it was exactly the opposite. It sounds like we're plunging into exactly the same situation as we plunged into last year. Now, we all know about NHS shortages and that every year it's difficult at winter. But I think it's fairly valid to ask, why didn't you make any preparations? They don't seem to have done anything.
Nothing at all. Or it appears to me to be nothing at all. And yes, we've got backlogs, but that's because of the last lockdown. So, you know, quite often in winter, Kevin, I promise you, elective surgery gets cancelled. This is not unusual. When the NHS is under pressure, elective surgery gets cancelled. If that has to happen, it has to happen. But somehow the NHS has to muddle its way through. And it shouldn't be us helping it to do that anymore.
Just before we go to Brett, I want to ask you one question because you know, I don't want to be vituperative about that eminent backbencher, the venerable Tory MP Sir Roger Gale, but he was on Talk Radio earlier announcing that it looked like it might be time to consider a firebreak lockdown. When are these people going to work out that lockdowns don't work? When are they going to work out that every time you have another lockdown, it proves that the last one didn't work? If lockdowns work, why are we talking about them 1 year after we had the first one?
Well, it's just the definition of insanity, isn't it? To just keep doing the same thing and hoping for a different result at the end of it. You know, there's so much evidence now that show that lockdowns do more harm than good. There's estimates that 4 people will die because of lockdowns for every one that dies of COVID.
Really?
You know, so what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? They had lockdowns in Wales that went on and on and on, and their rates carried on going up and then going down because the virus will ultimately do what the virus does, peak and trough.
Yeah, I've never really liked sequel movies very much, but Coronavirus, the sequel, is shaping up to be the worst film ever made. And it looks like we're entering it for another winter. It's just unbelievable. Renee, great to talk. Stay where you are. Renee Hoenderkamp, Dr Renee Hoenderkamp, GP and medical writer.